Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of the Hot Path Show. I'm Johnny, joined by nobody right now. Tobias will be on the show. He's just doing a couple things with some family, and he's going to be joining us. He's actually going to be taking over for the main topic today, where he's going to be talking about how he developed a custom network stack for his game Just Read the Instructions, which, by the way, you can get right now on Steam. It is available, so you can go ahead and pick that up using the links in the description below. If you do enjoy the game, be sure to leave a review on that, because it definitely does help discoverability and visibility and everything like that. So anyways, we have a pretty jam-packed show here today. A lot of cool things to talk about this week. Let's just start getting into some things. First thing that I wanted to bring up is share the screen here. Unity 6000 is now available. This is the Unity 6 preview is what they're calling it. Basically, the preview version of this new version of Unity 6 is kind of similar to what they used to call the tech stream releases for the major Unity versions, when they were kind of like tied to the year. So this is basically out right now, and its theory has all the features that the full long-term support version of Unity 6 will have when that's fully released. So you can go ahead and download that and play around with it now. This supposedly is fully compatible with all the latest versions of ECS and everything like that. I haven't actually played around with Unity 6000 quite yet. Still been on 2022 long-term support, which has been working fine for me. But there's definitely some interesting things here, especially in relating to graphical performance, just kind of like other random tools and stuff. Again, a lot of stuff on the graphics end, lighting enhancements. I'll go ahead and post the link to this blog here in the chat if you all want to go ahead and check that out. Again, this is all the new features as part of Unity 6. It is available now in preview. I'd just be curious to know if anybody has used Unity 6 and kind of what their experiences are with it and how they've liked it so far. It seems to be kind of a pretty good solution overall. Oh yeah, one thing that I really like about Unity 6 is the addition of build profiles. A earlier version of Unity ECS did have something kind of like build profiles available with these like build configuration assets, where you could store a bunch of things related to your build configuration in an asset. So whenever you wanted to run a build with some specific configurations, you could just go ahead and click the button and do that right away without having to go through and making sure everything is like set up correctly and all that. So yeah, definitely really cool feature to have there. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? Oh, early access to the Web GPU backend. I know a lot of people have been very much looking forward to this. Web GPU basically gives your browser access to take advantage of the GPU, so you could run kind of compute shaders and kind of do more intense things on there. So it's interesting and good to see that Unity is continuing to do web support. I know definitely one kind of big shortcoming of Unity Dots right now is that it doesn't have like a really great kind of tie-in for WebGL, especially just because these browsers obviously can't really support multi-threading and some of the crazy advantages we can get with the burst compiler. So it is nice to see that we can see at least some performance on the Web GPU end. And unclear if what the future for dots on the web is going to look like right now, at least. Unity editor support for ARM-based Windows devices. If you're doing that, that's great. DirectX 12 improvements if you're using DX12. Like I said, a lot of things on the graphical end. XR experiences. Of course, they're improving support for Vision Pro and all the other new things along that. Again, go ahead and check out Unity 6000. Lots of good multiplayer stuff in here. They were talking about this new kind of distributed authority for netcode for game objects, where I guess instead of having like one client or host or server be the kind of like dedicated authority. The authority is actually kind of like distributed over a larger number of clients, which definitely seems interesting. Of course, netcode for entity support. Like I just a couple weeks ago, a month or so ago, I put up my big netcode for entities tutorial. It works pretty decently in the 2022 version, so I would assume that it'll still work great in Unity 6000. And yes, Unity 6000. I refuse to call it Unity 6 because it is actually version Unity 6000 if you look at the actual version number. It's funny that they had to do that just because, there's so many things that are reliant on, if Unity version is greater than 2024, well, unfortunately 6 is not greater than 2024 or whatever, so they had to change that to Unity 6000. So yeah, go ahead and check out Unity 6000 if you are interested in that. Odin Inspector will still be compatible, and pretty much all the assets that you've used from the Unity Asset Store, these will all be compatible with Unity 6 because this is basically just kind of like building off of the previous versions. Like this was pretty much used to be, it's like a rebranding of the 2023 version, which is just kind of like building off of the 2022 version essentially. So there's not any crazy like breaking changes. So go ahead and expect anything, any of your assets to work as expected. All right, another important bit of news here that we can get into is Unity announces their new CEO, Matthew Bromberg. So this is a picture of this handsome gentleman right here. Basically, if you'll remember, Unity had a CEO for quite a long time, John Riccatello, and then he did some things that people didn't like too much, and so he kind of stepped away. And then we had this interim CEO called Jim Whitehurst, who everyone seemed to really like, and he actually kind of went out on stage during the Unite event in Amsterdam and was basically talking about how he's kind of the head of the company, and talking a little bit about the company reset that they've been going through, where they kind of want to refocus on games and all that. And so he was just kind of the interim CEO. And yes, I do see here. So yes, the old CEO, or I guess the interim CEO, he's actually the chairman of the board. So he's, seemed like he's going to still be like very, very involved with the direction of the company, which is definitely a good thing because I think a lot of people really liked Jim. I briefly met him in passing actually at GDC. He seemed like a really cool person. And, again, I liked the kind of direction that he wanted to push the company in. So glad that he's still kind of involved in some capacity. And from what I understand, he was, very involved in selecting this new CEO here. So anyways, this new CEO, he has a lot of experience kind of like in the games industry and a lot of kind of things related to mobile specifically. I guess recently he was kind of the chief operating officer of the company Zynga, which of course is a massive mobile company. From what I understand, the Zynga, I'm not like super familiar. I hadn't been like following along with this, but I guess during the time that he kind of was at Zynga, he was very helpful in kind of doing their own kind of company reset and kind of company shift, because I think back in maybe like the early 2010s, Zynga was like a really massive big company. They had a ton of money. They were like the top mobile companies or whatever, and I think people got kind of down on them, and we saw that company started to kind of take a turn downwards. And again, I'm not super familiar with kind of like what the refresh had been since then, but as I was kind of reading around, it seems like he was kind of helpful in kind of helping turn that company around a little bit. So yeah, it's he's now the CEO of Unity, and I don't know what else do I have to say about him. I guess we'll just kind of see how things go. But again, seems to be very experienced in the games industry. I think a lot of people are also kind of giving him a hard time because he worked at EA for quite a long time, or I guess it was only maybe 4 years or so. But people are like, hey, the previous CEO, John Riccatello, he was kind of, the big CEO at EA, and that didn't go super well. So, is this just kind of history repeating itself? And again, really hard to say off the bat if that's going to be the case. Matthew's kind of primary roles over at EA. He did do some things kind of related to their mobile initiative, like he was kind of the head of their mobile division, but he was also the head of like the BioWare studios. And this is before, the BioWare studios kind of, did the, the newer Mass Effect game that I think a bunch of people didn't super like. But he was there during kind of like a good time being ahead of it. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see how things go with him. Hopefully, hear more things. Yeah, actions speak louder than words, indeed. So, I mean, that's just kind of the status of that right now. Also do want to point out that coming up on Thursday, May 9th at 2 p.m. Pacific time, Unity is having their Q1 earnings call, where I suspect they'll, probably talk a little bit more about the new CEO announcement, as well as just kind of like going through the finances during the whole, company reset. And, so it'll be very interesting to see if you're kind of, into the business side of Unity and you want to see kind of how they're doing. Again, tune into the earnings call, the Q1 earnings call. That's Thursday, May 9th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Unfortunately, I don't have a link handy for you. Actually, there might be a link in here somewhere. Nope. Yeah, if you just Google Unity Q1 earnings calls, if you're interested in that, you can get to that pretty quickly and easily. So, go ahead and check that out. Also, do want to point out that again, don't have a link for this one here, but I should pull this up real quick here because Unity is putting on another webinar soon, and this one is specifically for netcode for entities. So this one's going to be put on by Esteban, who's one of the advocates over at Unity. And so he is putting on this Getting Started with Netcode for Entities webinar. And I'll go ahead and grab this for you all here and post that in the comments. All right, so yeah, you can go ahead and just sign up on there if you want to see it. Usually these webinars have been going on for about an hour or two. It's on May 15th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And again, that was about getting started with netcode for entities. So if you haven't, done anything with netcode for entities quite yet, definitely go ahead and check that out. But if you don't want to wait till May 15th, of course, you can also check out my netcode for entities tutorial that I put up a few weeks ago. Yes, he does have very nice glasses. And thank you very much. Glad you liked the netcode video. I had fun making it. And hopefully it's helpful for y'all. Okay, so moving on, I do want to have a little bit of announcement here. Some of you may have seen this if you were paying attention to the Discord or some of the community posts, but I'm going to be making some changes to the Patreon support, also giving you the ability to support over here on YouTube if you'd like. So now have the ability to become a YouTube channel member here. Basically, I've set up the perks exactly the same as they are over on Patreon. So, it's just kind of your preference. If, you do want to support us, again, support is completely optional, of course. But if you do want to support us financially, you can do it, over here on YouTube as well as over on Patreon. The really only difference is with YouTube is you get the little chat icons next to your name for supporting us. But yeah, you still get the exact same benefits. So at the RAM tier, you get a one additional bonus video from me every month. I'm going to be basically rolling out, if you do support me on YouTube, I'm going to be rolling out these videos basically over the course of the month, kind of the backlog of ones that I've already posted over on Patreon. You also can vote on upcoming topics. I'm going to be putting up a poll probably tomorrow because next episode of the Hot Bath Show is episode 16. So I think it's a cool, power of two episode. So we're going to have a little celebration. So we're going to have myself, Danny, and Tobias. We're going to be having the three of us on the stream for the first time together. So I'm going to be putting up a little poll about, seeing what you guys want us to talk about. So that poll is going to be up on YouTube as well as Patreon. And then also one slight modification that I've made is now supporters at any level, all have access to the additional Discord channels that I have available to supporters. So yeah, if you basically link your Discord account with either YouTube or Patreon, however you support us, then you'll basically get added to those roles, which will give you access to those additional channels. So kind of wanted to make some modifications here to, give people, be able to give people more advantage to be able to take more advantage of the kind of bonus content and stuff that we're offering here. Also, I've gone ahead and dropped the monthly Q&A video down to the L2 cache tier as well, that previously only was at L1 cache and above. But again, I think these Q&A videos are quite valuable. So I do want to give people more opportunities to ask, questions to me that may not necessarily fit in kind of like a regular episode of the Hot Path Show or, any other kind of content that we're doing over on here. And of course, you still get access to the show notes. By the way, I also am changing it so the podcast form of the Hot Path Show is basically going to be publicly available now. I just think that's going to be able to, help with discoverability and kind of growth of the show and everything. So right now the podcast is just available on YouTube. So this is just kind of the playlist, the podcast playlist you can get to, and I guess I'm not sure if you can like subscribe to that there or something yet, but I'll look into that. And I do want to get this on all of the other main kind of like podcast services as well. And then basically the L1 cache, you still get access to the monthly additional behind the scenes videos. Again, for YouTube support, I'm going to be rolling those out over the course of the month, the previous ones that I've done, as well as, when we do host the Turbo Makes Games game jams, at this support level and up, I will play your games on stream and give you feedback on them. So, give you a little bit more details on those when, we do have some more information on the game jam, which will hopefully be within the next couple months here. We'll let you know on that one. And of course, at the top tier, the CPU register tier, you do get an additional shout out at the end of the Hot Path Show. So yeah, anyways, those are just kind of the changes to the support over on Patreon and YouTube. So again, support is completely optional, but we do really appreciate it because we're a small little operation here. So every dollar does really go a long way. And yeah, I would really do hope that you guys enjoy the additional bonus content because I have a ton of fun making it, and I think there's some good stuff in there that people will find value from. So anyways, with that, we can go ahead and kind of move into the next part of the show. Again, a little bit later on the show, Tobias is going to be joining us, where he's going to be talking about building a custom network stack for his game, Just Read the Instructions. But still, we have a couple other cool things to get through here. So for one, I do just want to remind you that the Unity Asset Store is still hosting their spring sale right now, where you can get over 500 assets for 50% off. So the awesome Agents Navigation asset is available for 50% off, as well as the expansion of this that I recently did a review on called the Agents Navigation Crowds asset. So this one is, specifically gives you flow field pathfinding, which is super cool. Again, check out my review if you want a little bit more information on that. The Rukonka ECS animation system is also 50% off. So if you do want to, this is one good solution for implementing animations in ECS. I've done some videos using this asset in the past, and it's been pretty nice. It works kind of alongside the regular Unity mechanism setup, as you can see that they're doing here. So I was quite happy with that asset. Of course, the Odin Inspector as well as the Odin Validator are both available for 50% off, so super cool with those. The Shapes asset by Freya Homer, if you want to do any kind of vector art for your game, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. It's been pretty helpful for me for kind of like debugging purposes, where I need to kind of like draw lines and shapes that are a little bit more complex than what Unity offers you out of the box. And last week on the show, I did kind of show you how to use this with an ECS project, and I did clip that out and post it to my main YouTube channel as well. Let's see. Also, the spring sale, they kind of did a little bit of like a refresh, basically, where they kind of like added some additional assets to the spring sale. So if you checked in on the sale last week, there may be some additional things that were added on Monday. So one of them is the full screen editor. So if you want the ability to kind of go into like a completely full screen version of your game, you can do that. You can use the scene view as well as game view in the full screen context. It's really nice for if you're taking any like videos of your game. You don't have to like crop in the screen recording a little bit to get rid of all the extra Unity editor stuff. So just a simple little plugin, costs you $10. I think it's a good asset there for the money there. Also, ALINE is available. It was just added. So this one's super cool because it shows you, or it gives you the ability to draw kind of additional debug lines, specifically in an ECS and burst context, which is super cool. So the lines and stuff, they're a little bit simpler than what you can do with like the shapes asset, for example, but they're a little bit more, give you a little bit more options than just the regular Unity built-in debug lines. And supposedly, according to these fancy little graphs here, they are much better in performance. As far as like the time it actually takes to render them. Again, it fully works in a burst and ECS context. During the kind of cache hits portion of the show, I'm just going to be showing you just a quick little overview about how to implement these in an ECS project, because it is pretty easy and straightforward. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to using ALINE more. I wasn't familiar with this asset until I think it was Phony came in and let us know about this asset the other week, and yeah, it was super cool to now see it on sale. So yeah, definitely looking forward to using this, because that's kind of been one of the issues that especially with using ECS and burst and everything like that, is kind of drawing these debug lines and visualizations actually from that kind of bursted context. So yeah, in the couple minutes that I've been playing around with it so far, I've been happy with it, and glad that I can use it in some cool ways. So anyways, with that, we can get into the next portion of the show, which I will go ahead and just kind of continue with that and show you how to use this in a project. So we'll share the actual window here. Okay, so this is Unity. I've done basically the same setup as what I had last week with the shapes asset, where I just kind of have these different points in space just kind of like randomly moving around a little bit, and they're just kind of like all connected with a line, so you can see these lines are kind of moving around. Might be kind of thin looking on the stream, but you kind of get the idea. We have these like basically debug lines being drawn here. So it is pretty easy to set up. So if I go here, let's put these all in the same tab. So yeah, I have the same kind of node mover system where it just kind of like randomly moves these nodes around. And then if you remember last week, I had this little line drawer system that uses this custom system base draw, or it inherits from this custom system base draw, which allows us to use the shapes asset. So there was like a little bit of an extra step involved where we had to create this system base draw file, inherit from that, and then kind of use it in this context here. The unfortunate thing with this is we can't use this from burst or from jobs, so it is a little bit of a limitation on that end. However, ALINE doesn't have those same limitations. As you can see, we're just using this from just a regular public partial struct iSystem of this ALINE drawer system here. So you see that I've kind of implemented this a couple ways just as I was like, testing some things out here. But basically there's a couple ways that you can do this. So you can just use kind of the standard draw.line, and that will just kind of draw a line basically as a gizmo. So that's only going to draw it essentially in the editor window. However, if you actually want to draw it in the game view and have it be available in world space, then you just do draw.ingame.line. And again, you see that I'm passing in just, the positions and the color and everything like that. So I'm just doing this in a regular idiomatic for each, just getting the positions of the different nodes and just kind of, drawing the line appropriately like that. So that's kind of one way that you can do it. This is kind of the standard way that works in, regular game objects and everything. You just use this draw.line, super simple to use. However, if we do want to actually do it in a job context, we need to do this a little bit differently. We basically need a command builder. So the way that you get that is you just do drawing manager.getBuilder, and then this true false variable here determines if you want to draw it in the game view or just in the editor view. So I'm passing in true because I want to draw it in the game view. And then you'll see that I've kind of scheduled the job here and just kind of pass in that builder here as this command builder. And really the only difference is instead of doing draw.line, you just do builder.line. And yeah, that basically just kind of like works as expected here. I'm actually doing this on the main thread right now, but I think if I do this where I say dot schedule, schedua, let's do a schedule parallel, and then I think what I can do is can say dispose after, and then what do I need to pass in so I got to get the job dependency from this guy here. So let's see, we'll say state dot dependency is equal to that, and then we'll go ahead and pass in the state.dependency in here, and then dispose after. I suppose I can just do state.dependency, if I can spell that correctly, dependency. So actually prior to this I was not calling this dispose function, and actually wasn't drawing them, so I think there was kind of some maybe issues with that. So let's just see if this works here. I think it should. So I just want to make sure that this works in a parallel context as well. Let this take its time to compile. But I mean, as you can see, it is a pretty easy to use asset. We didn't have to create any additional things. We can basically just kind of import all the assets and just kind of use them as needed. I will say that the assets do just pop up in the assets folder like this. It would be nice if these were all kind of put away in a package. That would just be kind of one small little change on that, just to not clutter up the assets folder all too much. But I'll go ahead and hit play mode, and yeah, looks like everything is still drawing exactly as it should. So glad to know that it works doing schedule parallel. Again, this was in a burst context and everything like that. So yeah, been pretty happy with the asset and the few minutes that I've used it for, and again, very much looking forward to using this for more things to come. Okay, so with that, we can go ahead and move over to the next portion of the show, which indeed is going to be our context switch. I want to talk about the new Unity version or Unity ECS version that was just released here. So we'll go to this guy here and share it on screen. So yeah, just the other day, this says 426. So, and we have somebody joining us here. Hello, my friend.
Hello. Woohoo.
Woohoo, yeah. Indeed.
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's going good. Good. Some cake, some coffee, and I'm all set up for having some podcast going.
Awesome. Let's go. So yeah, I was just about to get into talking about the changelog for a new minor Unity ECS version, which was just released, the 1.2.1 version.
Oh, right.
Yes. So yeah, the 1.2 version just came out a little over a month ago or so. But yeah, there's a new version that was just released. So yeah, 1.2.1. This is mostly just some very minor fixes. This one is appearing again, which is a little bit concerning because this is, an issue that I've ran into many times with the entities This says the entities hierarchy view would sometimes throw exceptions when entities were destroyed. And actually, if we just go ahead and literally just do a Control-C, Control-F, and paste that in there, you can see, we already had this before in 1.2.0-pre-release 12. So now hopefully it's actually fixed. We'll see.
yeah, let's hope for it. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it was literally the exact same line, but yeah.
I haven't had it a single time when I was working in the 1.2 version with the Unity ECS thing. So fingers crossed.
Okay, and yeah, actually that reminds me of something that I want to ask you about as well after this. But the 1.2 version has been pretty stable for me, just in general. So I've been pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Another thing, the inspector no longer shows stale content when exiting play mode while locked in authoring mode on a game object outside of a subscene. So yeah, there were some kind of weird things where, I think just like the inspector was like showing blank or something like that, where, you'd click off and just kind of certain scenarios. So, just helpful that it's, displaying the actual things that you should be expecting. Yeah. And then, we just have some other minor things here about dependency tracking, setting change version for the setting component enabled, and kind of, adding an additional thing to an internal query. So pretty minor things, again, just mostly bug fixes in there. So that's the main entities package.
Yeah, literally minor, the 0.1. Yeah.
Yeah. Entities graphics does have a little bit more of an interesting change here. So this says material references and mesh. I think there's a typo, meshy reference. Mesh references have been provided as non-allocating replacements for materials and meshes. So that's super interesting.
I think I saw something about this in somewhere. Yeah, that they had I think this is already a little bit inside of the 1.2 thing, maybe not exposed or something. But I saw something when I looked through it baking something, and I was like, this is a non-class version of a mesh or material or something. And now, something burstable, sort of.
Exactly. So yeah, it does seem super interesting for that reason. And then you can see they just kind of deprecated the actual render mesh array .materials and meshes, again in favor of those non-allocating render mesh array material and mesh references. So just kind of basically removed those and fixed a couple of small little issues there. Those are basically the main changes. The netcode and physics packages were also, technically updated to 1.2.1. However, they're basically just kind of like changes for the project dependencies. But there actually is one cool thing that I do want to point out here. You can see there's this new little link here under the version number that says add version 1.2.1 by name. So check this out. If you click on this, you probably can't see it right here, but it pops up a little thing that says this site is trying to open the Unity editor. You say open. I already have the Unity editor open here. And so it just actually probably should just share the whole window for this. So it pops up with the package manager, and it basically pre-populates the add package by name with com.unity.entities and the specific version number. So you don't have to manually type that in now. So that's super cool.
That's nice.
And it is nice because I think also if you open a new project, I don't think it actually shows. I still think, it still shows 1.0.16 as the recommended version. even though the 1.2.0 is a full released version, I guess for whatever reason, inside.
I think that's different in Unity 6.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I think I automatically got 1.2 when I downloaded Unity 6 and installed entities.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I
I remember I read something on the forums where I think it was Joe Valenzuela. He's kind of like one of the heads of Dots over there. Was basically saying that it was like kind of a conscious decision that they made to keep it on 1.0 for now, even though 1.2 was fully released. But yeah, again, that may be different in Unity 6000.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, anyways, there's a new version of Unity ECS available. So go ahead and check it out, play with it a little bit. But yeah, one thing that we did kind of talk about at the beginning of the show is that Unity 6000 preview is now available. So it sounds like you've used it a little bit. What's kind of been your experience with it so far?
I am like actually sort of surprised in a good way that it seems like they are just turning a new corner because there's so many small things that been bugging me forever that they just all of it are just different. It's not like they have added a shit ton of features that I know of or made a bunch of bug fixes. It's more a lot of quality of life changes that I didn't expect. Like when you go in and you say new script, then you get to choose not just the mono behavior template. You get like a ton of different versions of everything that you can create, and all of the different entities templates also.
Cool.
So you just have the right click create menu. That's just completely different. And like I've been working with Unity since 5.2. Since basically 2014. So 10 years now.
Nice.
And that menu hasn't changed.
Yeah, no, it's been all the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, what the hell is going on here? and it's a little bit of a getting used to it, but it's good. It's good.
Well, one of the things that I think was available in the Unity 6000 beta version was when you did right-click create, there was actually a search bar at the top. And you could type in the search bar, like if you want to say like add, I don't know, a line renderer, and you just say, oh, what category is the line renderer on? Like you don't have to remember that. There's like a little search bar, and you could type in line renderer.
Maybe that is, and I didn't noticed it.
But so it's not in the preview version. Okay. Yeah, I think they ran into some issues with it late, so then they decided not to ship it.
Well, I'm not super surprised. That sounds like something that is edge caseable, edge case prone.
It sounds like it actually had to do like a lot of reworking about how they just kind of contextualize searching in general. So it's kind of a bigger task than just kind of adding a simple little search bar to the menu, I guess.
Yeah. But I'm excited about Unity 6.0 or
cool.
6000 or whatever you call it. I think it's
I call it 6000 because that's what it is, right?
Yeah. But I guess they're doing a similar thing that they did with Windows from Windows 9, Windows 7 to Windows 10 or Windows 8 and Windows
8 to 10, yeah.
Where for technical, I don't know if people know, but like there's a ton of legacy code that depends on like, oh, does the Windows version start with a 9?
Right. Yeah. Just say Windows 9 star. Yeah.
Yeah, Windows 95 or Windows 98 compatibility code, and then you're like, well, we just skipped the whole thing, and now it's like, well, let's pretend that the whole 2017 to 2024 or 2023 era is just gone, and we just go from the 6 that we released 2014 to this, or the 5 that we released 2014 to the
right
6 that we released 2024.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
So it sounds like is that going to be probably the main version of Unity you're going to be using going forward?
Well, now I'm on a consulting job that is on 12
Oh,
months.
wait,
So,
yeah.
but on my own projects, yeah, for sure.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I'm not looking back, especially not with entities. Now that I'm way more comfortable with baking, even baking in the context of my game, which is a lot of procedural stuff, I'm like, yeah, baking. I appreciate that, and then all the entities, all the new fancy stuff. Let's go. Because that was one of the things with 1.0 that I really pushed away my old solutions, and I had to like get the hang of the new like subscenes way of life, and that
Right.
annoyed me in
Yeah.
the beginning a lot actually. So
Yeah.
now I'm
No,
getting around to it.
it definitely was something for me to get used to as well, because I mean we're so used to the generate authoring component workflow and all that. So
For sure, for sure.
all right. Well, are you ready to go with your topic here? Because I think that's pretty much all the kind of
Yeah, but
earlier things I wanted to get through here. But
I
yeah,
do have one little like that I didn't remember to write in our show notes.
okay.
You remember the you probably haven't had time to look at it, but the package thing that I did share with you.
Yeah. Just the thing you sent me the other day.
Yeah. And I was curious because I'm like trying to think of the best way to frame what that problem is about. So I would I'm thinking maybe I should ask the audience and see if anybody have any comment on it, and
Sure.
see if they, yeah. So let me explain here and see if people are following and can get thumbs up or thumbs down, or maybe I should rephrase it. So there's a package that I'm planning to that I've been using in my own project for 4 or 5 years, and it's like for me working with version handling and different phases of developing, you need different types of like settings, and they are not necessarily user settings or player preferences or anything like that, or machine settings like resolution. There can be anything, debug, or server addresses for like a startup, and that changes every now and then. You don't want to hard code that. And Unity have editor preferences or player preferences, but this is the thing where it's like it's a thing where you can just create a static class with static boolean, float, int, and strings, and long and double and all, but the primitives. And then that static class, you put a little attribute on it, and then in the background I have a tool that creates an init file that is sort of drives the value, if you like, of that in real time. And you can override those values with a debug version of it in game and the in editor. So you have like this static class which just you can control in runtime, just like, and just the actual values, no strings needed, just like my settings class dot my boolean, and then that value is the thing you can control in different ways through settings in a file and through command line or in game or whatever. And you can turn off the hood, turn on invulnerability, turn off Steam, turn on this, that, increase your health, and or whatever. And that I'm planning to release as a package, and I want to call it auto settings. And now the question is, one, is it a good name to call it auto settings? And two, does this whole problem space make sense to people, or am I solving something that other people don't care about?
Well, I as you were talking, I just thought of a great name for it.
Okay.
No strings attached.
no strings attached. Unfortunately, I like it. Unfortunately, this is probably quite far away from the intended use, even though and I would assume you're implying like easy save or other tools like that have this, like you need to like specify your save thing with a string, like, oh, this is the thing that I'm saving and I call it this name, right?
Is this a fair way to put it? A bit like what's happening with the new input system?
No, I don't think so. This is not input from the keyboard.
Well, just no. As far as like saving kind of like settings in an asset and giving you the ability to kind of again access those without specifically typing in strings, but you have like actual variables to access specific things. That's kind of how I'm interpreting it, I guess.
Yeah, I think maybe you know what? Maybe I can just like share something here. My screen is being a little bit weird here, where I can't see the bottom of the. Let me just like I can just like show like 2 lines of code that like present. Let's see, present. See if my computer just dies or not. Share screen, entire screen, and we go for this one. And that's right. No, that was just
Yeah, you just do this.
Oh, there we go. Yes, and we do like this, and I can just go to global settings. But yeah, the comment about like global project settings may be a little bit closer. Let's see here. So here I have it. So we can ignore these. There's more, but here I have like this is the attribute, and it's the class.
Okay.
At the class, and I just have a bunch of different variables.
Okay.
This is all like this is it. This is all that you need really, and then you can check out like hide HUD, right? So if you go to that, you'll find that it's used in a few places. For example, like in the player HUD, you have like this here, where I set active to a bunch of stuff depending on if you hide inventory, hide instructions, hide dialogue, and hide HUD. All of these guys. And that actual Boolean value in the background is in runtime controlled via a file or the command line. If you on startup, obviously from command line, or in-game overview. Like I can control it from anywhere, and it just depends on what I need for the moment. If I'm on a build on a end computer, then I want the in-game panel to be able to pop it out. Like, oh, I'm showing it towards an investor and they're about to die. Quickly get out the controls things and make him invulnerable so he can experience the whole product and not die.
So it's like a static class of settings that can be set at runtime as well as maybe during the build process, but it writes everything to the INI file, so it's like on disk basically.
Yeah, it can be written. Everything can be written to an INI file, but you can also use it as through in-game, and you can make it so it doesn't write to so it's just runtime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you could another example could be like you build to a specific folder, and in that folder you have like a shortcut to the game, and just the shortcut. The only thing that the shortcut does is that it just applies not full screen setting. So like every time you build, you may be doing a multiplayer situation where you run one of the server in the editor, and then as soon as you build it and you're gonna compare it to the client, which you have a build version of, you never want it to be full screen, because that's annoying to deal with full screen when you're trying to do 2 things at the same time with 2 different builds. So like, as long as I start it through this shortcut, which has the built-in command line that says don't full screen it, whatever you do, so I can like override values from command lines.
Okay.
Yeah, like that.
Cool.
And all of that sort of overriding whenever I need it. Like, yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like it. It kind of like ties in / reminds me a little bit of what we were just talking about with Unity 6000 with their build profiles, where you can kind of have a bunch of specific settings for a specific build that when you click on one build type, it will build things with those appropriate configurations that you've set up.
Like that. Yeah, and also there's another very good example of that I've actually used exactly like this. Like you have a person who is developing like the back end, and another person who is working on nothing to do with the back end. And there's like a server address that everybody who works on the game, not normally, they just use the default server. And then every once in a while maybe they change the domain or do something, so you have this server address in the ini file committed to this to the source control. So everybody has the one that it works well, and everybody can work on it. And then when the guy who works on the back end, he's like, I need to test this with another test server.
He can easily override it.
his local debug override in it, that like, oh, this one isn't
Oh, okay. Cool.
put onto for source control, and then
Yeah, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
can have their local version that overrides the first one.
And you just, yeah, basically have the difference of those changes essentially.
Yeah, and like for me, I have a bunch. All the invulnerability, hide HUD, and all of that is just in the local debug file. So even though I work myself, when I worked with my old colleague, he didn't have my local debug overrides because he was working on different things and he needed different configuration, right?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically what it's for. And I don't know. It seems to be one of those problems when I ask people about it. They're like, they haven't really run into that issue as much as I've had myself. So maybe
I mean, I definitely do things like this all the time, but I usually just kind of like build it out in the editor as like a little checkbox or something. Because like, you know, for the most part, for simple things, I can kind of get away with that. But I definitely see, you know, as a project grows, you know, more of these kind of things start getting distributed in all different places of your project, and it can be difficult to keep track of. And then, you know, you spend all this time running a build and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to like, you know, check that one thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That and I never want to be in that position. You know? It's like I don't want any of this to be tied to compiling.
Yeah.
That's my, and I also saw somebody write as far as like a settings that, and you can have a class generator for it. This is the other way around. Let's see. Can I put it up like this?
Yeah, you can just click. Yep.
Yeah. No, this one. I have a class generator for it. This is the other way around, and that's what I like about it, because it's when you have like something that's generated, and maybe you use strings to identify different settings, like in a. If you traverse a JSON file or something, you usually use strings to identify your settings. Like, this settings is named. This is like a static class, hard typed, and my tool just makes like a text-based reflection of it. Like, oh, here I can say, but from the perspective of the programmer, there's no strings, no possible misspelling.
No strings attached.
No.
It's good to cache.
Yeah. Let's see, and someone said we have something similar with Sanctuary, but it's build versus debug versus personal. Yeah.
It's a good approach,
Yeah, and I'm trying to solve that whole chain. Yeah, that's a way to view it. And on my side, personal versus not pro, we are using a list of structure with a structurable object that is made available globally, even in burst with a shared static. Yeah, and if it's a scriptable object, the problem is that you can't override it unless it's runtime or in the editor. You can't like rewrite a different setting.
Right, yeah, because the scriptable object has to be like included in the build, right?
Yeah, it's baked into the asset files, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is a issue that I ran into in a project that I was working on at one time, but we came up with another solution for it, but I like this.
And also the ini file can be shared in the app data locally shared, where you put everything that is like whenever you can get the same settings from anywhere on the computer, because every program has their respective. It's like app data / local low / default company.
Right. Yeah.
And there you can put your resolution. That never changes on your global computer, on your computer globally. Yeah, I have yet to really use. How is it? Yeah, okay, that's different. Have you tried Unity Remote Config? Yeah, Unity Remote Config, but I think that's needs web access since it's remote. So I don't really want to have. Well, it's good to be able to sync it through cloud for whatever reason, but that's not really the problem for me. Yeah. Okay. So final thing, people can say, does auto settings make sense, or should I change it to like something else? We can move on, and people can just leave it leave in the chat and say like, yes, auto settings looks fine, or if they have a suggestion, they can leave it in the chat, and I will consider it, because I don't know. This is hard for me.
Yeah, I'll play around with it a bit and let you know if I come up with anything better than no strings attached.
Yes. I love that one, but like I said, I don't think it explains the tool very much. It's just a good play on words for a specific thing.
Settings with no strings attached.
With no strings. Very long. Do you think it will sell on the asset store with that long name?
Well, the thing with the asset store is like the SEO on it is weird, so that's why you see like so many super long names of like it's not as bad as like, you know, if you go on Amazon where you see like, you know, the title of the item is like the full description of like everything that it does and every use that it can have. You see that sometimes, but Unity, they in the Unity asset store, there's a lot of people who will kind of like, you know, put additional things in the title of the asset to I guess just help with the SEO.
That's very true. Yeah. Maybe I should think about that a little bit more to make a more explanatory name. I like short names, but maybe that doesn't.
I agree.
Much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Sweet.
Network stack, or where are we?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So I shared to you a few different part of the topic. I don't know where.
And actually, you know what? Before we get into this too deep, I want to start with just a question, an open question to you of why in general did you decide going with a custom network stack? You know, did you kind of consider any other options? And I guess what were some of your main reasons about, you know, why you chose to go with a custom networking solution as opposed to, you know, something off the shelf?
3 reasons. First of all, and this was the first thing which became less and less relevant, netcode for entities was a complete mess when I started making it. That was just like, it was if entities was a buggy thing, this netcode for entities was just a pre-alpha thing. It was just very, very strange. And the second thing was that netcode for entities was server authoritative mainly, and not meant to run on clients. It was meant that you have a central server that you pay for. And I just couldn't afford anything like that. That was just not in the realm of possibilities. And thirdly, I wanted to try. That's I think the full story. Nice. I mean, there was like if you want to do it bursted with the ECS, you learn like all of the off the shelf things in asset storage just off the. Like, I was gonna say, so that pretty much removed a lot of your you know, options for available things because you wanted to take advantage of burst and everything, of course, because that's, you know, kind of the game you're making, right? Yeah. And also I knew I had a few different things that was completely doable to just hard code or custom code into most network into the solution, because most of them you can just like dig deep enough until you get to the core and do very, very very tight stuff with the, even though the actual package that you buy maybe can include a lot of high level stuff, you can often go very deep into it if you need. But I knew that I had to do a lot of custom solutions for my crawlers, so that was part of it. I see there is this one .NET code asset by Mirror Guy that I know of. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't around. Yeah, was that the .NET? Because there was that asset called .NET, if you remember that was out for a little bit, but the guy actually kind of removed it off the asset store and kind of removed drop support for it. Rings a bell. Yeah, rings a bell. Yeah, .NET is the one. Yeah, .NET. Yeah, I don't think that was. So I don't think it ever even got an update to 1.0. The developer kind of dropped support for it around the time that 1.0 came out. Yeah. But it was mostly a complete mess, and also it sounded fun to try. And I was kind of super excited about non-dynamic programming, like vtables and classes and random access, whatever. Like, well, I wonder what happens if I just spew out a 10,000 long line code file with everything just linearly done. like very much hardcore data-oriented generating
Yeah,
code,
yeah, absolutely,
and that's what I did.
absolutely. That's great.
And it's by far never ever a performance issue in my game, so it worked out pretty well. It's like it's just not even I never see it in the profiler even because it's so fast.
That's great. And you had at least a little bit of experience working with a kind of custom networking solution on Battle, right? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't write any
Yeah,
of the
you weren't like the
parts.
the networking engineer or anything, but I mean, I'm sure you were interfacing with it quite frequently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw the full source of it all the time for different reasons, and heard my colleagues talk about it on the stand-up meetings or whatever, and they had like discussions about it. But I never had much input on it because they already built two network games before I even started that company, more or less. Well, one and a half, and I made some serialization, deserialization stuff for different things, but it was never really anywhere where I had to deal with the conceptual nature of making a proper engine. So I started, but I also like sort of all of the different problems that I didn't solve from the beginning. I knew this is probably something that is solved in a specific way for a reason. I'm just gonna pretend it doesn't exist and see when I break my own bones on this problem. And I ran into all of them and I had to solve it. And now I feel like I own the solutions in my body, sort of, like, oh, I know
Nice.
exactly what happens when you
Yeah,
don't do
yeah,
this
yeah.
properly. And
Yeah.
I didn't just read it. I didn't just read it on the blog and mimicked something else. I ran into the actual practical issue before I
Yeah,
solved most of them.
exactly. And yeah, that's so much more valuable because like, when you run into those solutions in, a practical context, now when you kind of like hear about, or maybe you're involved in another project where someone's trying to do some certain thing, you're like, oh, I remember, was stuck on
Yeah.
this for like a month trying to figure out some good solution for it. And yeah,
Yeah, I can just answer this one quickly.
yeah.
You don't use dedicated server peer to peer. Well, not peer to peer. That's peer to peer is a little bit of a myth sometimes. Often you have some sort of central managing, orchestrating situation, even though like everybody can pull their weight. In my case, it's just that everybody connects to one of the one of the clients, and that client runs specific server code, and it's just like maybe 5-10% more extra CPU load on that one.
Like it's kind of like
And
a host slash client
yeah,
setup, right?
it's
Yeah.
if you run to Steam, that it's the host of the lobby that becomes the server, and he just controls the enemies. And because it's a co-op PvE game, nobody cares about fairness, so I just simulate everything locally, and if you kill stuff, you don't need confirmation from anything. You just kill it on your local computer, and then you send it to the server like, I kill this. The server like, oh, you kill this? Okay, I tell everybody else, and we just good. Like no double checking anywhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
told
that's another advantage, I guess, of having control over your full networking solution is like, if you don't need, any of those like additional checks in place, just ignore them, right?
yeah, and also like relay. So there's two different parts to this. The first one is I implemented outside of Steam from the start with Leadgren transport layer, and that had built-in NAT punch through. So if you don't have your port open, I just punch through, and I have external server, which is a server listing service. So it's not a server. It doesn't even know what game. It just bounces IP addresses and like tell you about like, oh, this is a few IP addresses. And then when you try to connect to the server, it kiss like the NAT punch through weird thing where you send the same message with the same with like mirrored. I don't know if you ever read up on the theory behind the NAT punch through.
I haven't, no. I mean, I'm familiar with NAT in general. We're just working in IT,
Yeah,
but
but
not,
it's
yeah.
like when you communicate with somebody and you have agreement of the ports and everything, you sort of in a mirror case where it's like, oh, both because you're both following the same mirrored rule, you're sort of fine with it, but you need to sort of get that connection going. And the way you do that normally is like you have one of the people has one port open, so like all the web
Right.
servers.
Yeah.
They have their 8080 port open or whatever,
Right.
and you can
Yeah.
just connect. But if both have port closed, what you can do is that you can basically have a third party tell them like a mirror version of the same message, and you just send it blind. And because of how connection between two hosts which already agrees with each other works, this sort of fools the whole system that they are already in agreement, and it just goes through. It's a little bit strange, but it's like you send to each other like you already know each
Okay.
other. Yeah, and you can't do that unless you have a third party
So
arranging
you
the
basically kind
mirror.
of go out to the third party and you kind of get like some message or something from that third party, and then once that you both have
Yeah,
that
and the
message,
third.
then you could send it across, and then it says, "Oh, this is already a
Oh,
safe."
yeah, and I think, and this is off topic almost, like, but I think also part of it, I could be wrong. This is a long time ago. I implemented it, but I think also like the third party is actually sending like basically a, a mirrored version also to each of them, so they think they're getting an accepting message
Oh,
from the other
interesting. Okay.
side, which
Okay.
is sort of spoofed about the third person, like, oh,
Okay.
here you go, pretend that you know each other, like sort of that. And it's like, but if there's like, you can just Google up, and it's like a 5-minute read, and if you have a understanding of how port forwarding works generally, it's a pretty simple idea when you just read a few lines, read some up about it. So
Cool.
for anybody who's interested in port forwarding and tricky network connections, NAT punch through is a kind of fascinating trick, which is totally safe. It's just that you need a third party.
Right. 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 Right.
Yeah, but
I like
there's
that.
once they,
I'm gonna write
once
that
they are
down.
connected. Oh yeah, once they are connected, there's no relay server at all. You just communicate directly with with each other as a client server, and don't have to have a third party at all.
Do you have to like pay like a small server hosting fee for that external service?
I pay $4 a month.
Nice.
Yeah, and now this one, you can do all this through Steam. Yeah, Steam just like whoof, and it's not a problem because you identify each other with the Steam ID, the same ID that your actual like Steam account has, and it's totally opaque messaging. So DDoS, anti-DDoS thing, you just like, I have this message, and I am an authorized Steam user, and I have this, and I, through the right channels, I've gotten this other Steam user in my system, and I want to send this package to them, and then you just put it into the Steam API, and it just magically appears on the other side of the world at that Steam user. And there's nothing really you need to do about that, because they are solving all of the port forwarding and everything like that. And because it's through their already robust security system and encryption layers and stuff, it's just magic, and you don't have to worry. It's like the internet but better. if Yeah, and Epic Online Service also has a free version of that. Yeah. Both of these guys are free, and you should just use them if you can. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Cool.
Uh, what are we thinking? Are we thinking more conceptual things, code generation, or maybe some
I
how they
think
do
we can
fast
just maybe
burst?
kind of like follow this thread a little bit and just kind of talk from a high level about how you designed your networking stack and kind of what are some of the main concepts and theories behind what you came up with.
Yeah. Maybe actually code will be just a slightly distracting thing right now, so maybe I just talk about the
Yeah, I mean,
concept.
you can talk about it, and if there's like any small bits of code that would be helpful to share, that's cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, we can keep it kind of
Yeah.
conceptual for now and get into more specifics as we go.
Yeah. So first of all, I just there is an ownership situation, and the player, uh, everybody has a U short identifier, which just runs up, I think, 12 bits, so I don't even use all the 16, because I'm like, that's one thing. You can do a lot of napkin math about this, like how many entities am I going to use, how can I reuse them properly, do I have to have like 10,000 in reserve all the time, or can I just like be a little bit slim about it? And this is, counting bits, which doesn't really matter all the time in today's internet, because we got so much bandwidth in at least developed countries that you don't have to care. But I did the napkin math, and so there's like, I think it's 12 or 14 bits per network identified unit.
So yeah, 2 to the 12 is 4096. 4,000.
Oh yeah, then it's 14.
So 2 to the 14 is going to be 16,384.
Yeah, and 4,000 of them is reserved for the crawlers. So I got 12,000 IDs for the gameplay, basically. And I think I barely use like a fourth of that. So
yeah, always good to allocate more than less. So
yeah, and that's one of those things, bumps that I didn't know if I would gonna run into or not, and that's spawning and creation, and keeping that very structured, because the problem is like, obviously you need to have the server actually dedicate the numbers, like, oh, I have the number and I specify the client IDs about everything, so another client doesn't like come up with the same ID, because they are parallelized on 2 different locations and they have the same queue, and then like, oh, but I wanted to use 5, you use 5, what do we do now, right? And that can, you can do special solution by having different ranges for different clients. But I knew that everybody was going to go through one server anyway. There is no real peer-to-peer thing going on at all, really. So why not just have the server control that? So you have the spawn thing where first I have like the client could basically create their own stuff, but then turned out that that's a stupid idea. You need to ask the server to create something, and then you get a message back, and like, here you have some few identifiers that you can use to create what you asked for, and you can create that locally, but then you have the specific net IDs that you use to create everything, and then the same goes for destroying. Destroying is really a lot more complex than one might think to despawn something. So that's one of those things where you're like, if I reuse unit net IDs, then do you need to have like a buffer where you don't catch up to your own tail when you go through sort of a ring buffer situation? Like, oh, I used 10 for this thing, and then the 10 died, and I put it back into the queue, and then like, oh, directly after I'm using that 10, then is everybody okay that this 10 just switched what the hell it was? Like, for a while it was a crawler, and now it's another enemy, and like, it's that synchronization, and that's
does everybody know about that?
Yeah, and those kind of timing and delays and like timeouts and architectural thoughts around that's like, it's basically mathematically impossible to be sure about everything. You just need to like have checks and bounds around it, and like, but it's not like there's a chance of it happening. It's just and a message could bounce around the internet forever in theory, but it won't. So it doesn't really matter. But for me, it's I reuse, but I have a big buffer, like I said, like 6,000 IDs. And it's a queue, so when something gets reused, it puts back in the queue, and I use the other side of the queue. So there's not a stack. It would be stupid to use a stack in this case, but still, like, it's something to consider. And then like destroying stuff, to even destroy something, are you sure that everybody even knows this is created? Right? So you're like, oh, I'm created this. You send it away. You send it through a reliable networking thing, but that just means that it will try until it knows that the other client got it. And then like half a second later, somebody shoots the enemy that just spawned. and maybe the destroy message just for some reason just was super easy to send. But then that can't be, because you can't get the destroy message before you get the create message, or you can, but you need to deal with it. So in that ordering, and most transport layers do that sort of thing for you if you just configure it right. But when you're working with a custom network stack, that's something that you
Yeah,
need to like.
you need to make that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't make it, but I made
Or come up with some solution for it.
I used the right things in the transport API to do it. I needed to implement it, but there was sort of a pipe for it there. Like, oh, use this ID to properly queue it in different queues, and these queues are inherently ordered. And this queue is reliable, and this queue is ordered but not reliable, and this queue is completely unreliable, and you can like mix and match for whatever you need for specific things. So all of my commands, like, a single just message, are reliable, ordered. So every one of them come in the right order, and they always come. The whole goddamn game stops if it misses one of those, and it just tries to resend it until it gets confirmation that everybody knows about it. So that's the kind of stuff that you need to deal with. And that's, it's one of the things, until you get the problem, you don't really realize exactly what's going to look like. And then like, oh, right, you never got the create message. That may be something why people don't do it like this.
Right. Yeah.
Did you have to deal with determinism? No. Determinism is probably not really that relevant for as many games as maybe one when one thinks about this. Determinism is just very tricky to deal with, because it's like so hard to keep everything in order. All your ducks needs to be in a row to be able to like, it's very hard to know, oh, is this going to be actually determined? Yeah, so it's much better to just have a good type of interest management system, and that means like you get the right thing synced at the right point, so you're not like syncing a guy who doesn't matter for you when you're not around, and like spend a bunch of bits syncing him instead of what the hell is in front of you. So that is way more relevant in most games, that you like just sync what you actually need to sync and spend some bits on that. Compress it as much as you can, but then sync it, and do not pretend that you can be sure that everything is going to simulate the same way on all the clients, because that's very tricky to do. Yeah, it's a pain to think about it. Yeah, for sure. It's just painful. Yeah, I tried it with the crawlers. Not worth it. I spent a few weeks like trying to like figure out how to do it with locked frame rate and everything, and then I'm like, and then you have like some interaction with the rest of the game, and this interaction needs, it just becomes a rabbit hole that you need to dig all the way through and make sure that is also determinism. Otherwise, it has a little hole into non-determinism, and then you're just screwed whenever that channel of communication through in or out through the game engine. Whenever that does something different on another client, then it's just off, and you need to sync it. Yeah. So that was a few things. There's another concept which I think is very relevant, that people, as far as I've understand, when I work with people who aren't as used to network programming as I am, to not use position as a continuous update thing. People think like, oh, I'm going to sync the position or the rigid body or whatever. Well, physics maybe. With rigid bodies, that's a fair deal to sync it just continuously. But if you have a RTS, it's very obvious. You sync the point where you're at, and you sync the point where you're going, and then all the different clients do a pathfinding, and then you make sure that that's reasonably deterministic. It doesn't need to be deterministic. It's just
right.
Maybe you throw in a few positional bits every now and then to make sure they're not completely off, but otherwise they just basically walk the same road on both. And we're here to convince the player they're playing the same game, not make the pixels identical on the screens. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that deal applies to way more than just pathfinding type of movement. Anytime you can reduce a movement to not be a continuous, very like unreliably
Right,
unpredictable
because yeah,
movement.
that can chew up your bandwidth quite quickly, because you figure each entity that you're synchronizing is going to have a position, which is 3 float values, and then a rotation, which is another 4 float values, and then maybe if you're even synchronizing scale, that can even add more to it. So it's like
Yeah,
you know those bytes add up quite quickly, and it's like could you be using that bandwidth for more important things?
yeah. So crawlers are synced like positional things, but I can go into how they are very much optimized, their version of it. But the jumpers and the pillar beasts, which are the 2 other very common enemies, and actually the boomerangs in Just Read Instructions, they are not synced by positional thing at all, basically. Well, I mean positional in some way, but the what jumpers, they sync a point where they start, where they are right now, and then they find the point where they're gonna jump to, and the only thing that they sync is the new point and a timestamp. And then you're like, well, there's only one way I can get from here to here with that timestamp in mind, and then they just whoop, and they're just gone. And it, because of it's based on time, and time is very very hard, very very well synced on all the clients to begin with, because time is such a core concept to make the networking work smoothly. So if you just make sure that, okay, we just agree on this timing, and then we just go through a curve and like have the movement follow this curve through the
Right. All the
time.
clients know, how to handle that at that particular timestamp.
Yeah. So you use times and curves everywhere you can. That's so much better. It's like literally nothing wrong with nothing is worse with it, except that you have less control, because you're just going through maybe a line. But it can be a Bezier curve or whatever. You can have fun with it, or a pathfinding situation. But yeah, curves and timings are way better than continuous positional synchronization, because it just eats your bandwidth for no good
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
And well, speaking of timing, what's kind of been your strategy to synchronize time across clients? Are you using like a fixed network step? How are you kind of handling that?
That's the thing. Like, there's no fixed network stack, sync or anything like that.
Okay.
That's just more or less only relevant when you have a fairness situation and you have a central server which needs to lockstep simulate everything. And you can do lockstep input synchronization, and then you have all of the clients doing everything exactly the same thing. But it's a PvE. It's like you just shoot everything on your local machine, and it doesn't matter if it's whoever is doing what frame whenever. You just say like, I shot this guy, and then it's fine. And since everybody knows who got shot, they just destroy him locally when they get the message, and that's it. That's basically it. So there's like this time synchronization or like tick rate on servers and everything like that. You can just throw it out the window unless you need to be fair. There's just no reason to do it. You just need to make sure that the only real thing that matters is that you're not getting like a desync situation where you're like, oh, this thing did not happen in the same order on that thing, and the game just progresses differently when this turned into a different order. Like like I open this door and then I press on this button. If it's like a significantly different thing that happens if you do that the other way around, then you need to like then the server needs to be in control of those timings, and then the client needs to just follow it and not have any impact on the actual order. And that means ordering the command messages so they come in the right order, and everybody takes in everything in the right order, and it happens in the right order. But as far as like making sure they are simulating the similar amount of ticks, that's not Well, I guess it could come on the same tick, and then it's like a little bit tricky to know which one should be the first one because the server. But I guess that's a sort of an edge case that could be, but in practice that's just so rare because they're so rare that you have something that is the order is so important. But these things are a problem. But then also. I'm going on about this, but this is a tricky problem. Like, for example,
no, that's
something
great.
to,
Yeah.
but then you have the situation like, oh, I have a desync. I have like basically a timeline split. Like, oh, one player simulating this world and one other this world. But
Right.
the thing is that a lot of the consequences of this thing could be themselves synced in the end also, so they like stick back to the other part as soon as they get something else. But that's like of the consequences then the chain event of that happens after some like a discrete thing happens, like a switch click, and then something happens in the game and it just continues following a timeline. Like, you can choose to sync a few of those key moments, and then you just like stick back to the original to the real timeline in the end with the client, because they're like, oh, I was completely wrong. I thought we pressed on that button first. Never mind. Okay, we're going here. But that's the thing. Like, that's part of the problem with networking. It's like you have a bazillion states, and like, how can I just like pick out a few of them in the right order to shove to the client, and the client is with me. The other ones are implicit.
So it's kind of like,
three.
is that kind of almost like determining what things are like far enough out of sync and what things kind of need to like say, hey, force synchronize these things?
Yeah, or what's just like, if I sync this, all of these things will just fall in place. And I don't need to do anything about that. That's more, but also like if something just, well, this is turning into a very big diff. Maybe I should do something about that. But that's,
that seemed like it might be a tricky problem. Like, how do you kind of solve that about determining what things need to kind of get synced to get things back in order?
Yeah. But that's sort of like reactive syncing isn't super common to have. I think reactive, because then you have like, it becomes more of a plaster or like a tape, just hot gluing everything together and not actually fixing the problem by having like things that looks for errors and then fixes them with sync. I think that the better thought around this is to just like understand like what core states in your game should be regularly synced to keep everything.
Just kind of avoid those big varying desyncs.
Yeah, so you don't need to like actually look for a problem, because then you need
That's
to
smart.
ask
Yeah.
You need to ask everybody, are we off?
Yeah, and that's just could be chewing up even more bandwidth.
Yeah. So there's the best way to view it is like, what core states are the most efficient and reliable way to push over to the client, and then everything else will just fall into place.
Yeah.
That's like, a problem of like, how many bits do you want to spend on making, because you can just shove over a bunch of states. But if you have a very lockstep type of a game, like a RTS, where you just push mouse buttons, then maybe like inputs is actually the best frame of reference to sync. And you should just like, and then we just maybe once every 10 seconds we take like a 10% of our unit set and just sync them over, just to be sure. But otherwise we just lockstep sync all the inputs. Then the inputs is the best way to frame the problem. But in first-person shooter, which is way more continuous and not discrete type of actions, then that's not a good idea. Yeah. Somebody says, what about ghost prediction? Yeah, and that's one of those things where I don't need to care about that, because it's a PvE. So there's no like there's no fast twitchy thing. it's obviously a fast-paced game, but it doesn't really matter if your friend is 100 milliseconds behind what it's actually doing.
Right. Yeah.
Because
It's almost not even prediction at that point. It's really just local simulation. Like everyone's kind of simulating things locally.
yeah, and like you can have like client prediction where you like, oh, I need to walk forward, but I need to verify that with the server, uh, but I don't want to verify and wait for the server to be able to walk forward. Then it's like you need to have a client prediction system, which like, oh, I think the server is going to say this, so I'm just going to start assuming that as soon as I press the inputs. But that's also, when you have a server authoritative centralized situation like Batterite, that had to have client prediction, but just read instructions, none of that. When you walk, you move your position, and that's it. And then there's a compression thing which like tries to squeeze together the position, all this frame of your player, and sends that, tries to make it kind of small, and then
Right.
sends that over to the server. But it just read that every frame, just send it. So that's probably my biggest network footprint, is just the players syncing their continuous position, because the player position and rotation, that's completely unpredictable. That's not, you can't deal with that at all. With the bandwidth these days, more artists can sync at 10 hertz without determining. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, you just like, you don't need to care about trying to sync. So when you push the A star thing and it just walks, you can just like, well, we just walk with everybody, and maybe we'll throw in a bunch of state syncs. 10 hertz seems high to me, since you're probably not gonna be going all over the place 10 times a second. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is part where my experience may be a little bit less, because I never worked on an RTS game like that. In that case, I've made prototypes of it in school and stuff, and read articles, but I don't know if, yeah, I that could be the case. They just done it, and I'm not really sure. So, but that makes sense also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you use ghost predicting with unit states in RTS? No, unless they're walking very fast, I think. But don't take this as the gospel. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I just know that you don't need to have deterministic solutions for that kind of thing mostly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not
Again, the
really
ghost prediction is mostly for stuff like that needs to be kind of like high precision,
But they're
competitive,
responsive.
fast-paced games. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be useful for some scenarios in particular RTSs, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I could just bring up one thing which I am surprised I haven't seen more, and that's like, I think we talked about this on the project that we worked together on a few months ago. When you sync position or something like that, you have a specific range of values, because you have a map that is not infinite or not
Right.
float
Yeah.
max. And then you get like, maybe you don't need sub-millimeter synchronization precision. So what I did with just read instructions, because this procedurally generated maps, is that I figured out exactly how big the sort of box, the like conceptual invisible box where the player is perfectly synced, or not perfect, where the player is inside is synced. If it goes outside there, it sort of clamps the player. It can't even. It's like nothing happens outside of that. There's no values there. So I took when you start a map, it knows the size of the map, it generates it, and then I have a small constant that says like, oh, I think I have 0.5 millimeter precision on the highest level. And then it just figures out, and this is a few math functions, not really super tricky, figures out exactly how many bits do I need to get 0.5 millimeters of precision for 400 meters in a float value. And that's exactly how many bits I use for the X, Y, and Z respectively.
Right. Yeah.
So
Just another way to reduce your footprint on bits being sent over the network.
Yeah. This is not the best thing to do combined with delta compression. Because with delta compression, all of those higher order or lower order bits, like above like kilometer size movement or something like that, all of those bits don't move anything if you have a map that is smaller than that. But in delta compression, that won't matter because the delta will like, oh, this hasn't changed, so we're not gonna sync that part. But that's with delta compression. That's a different style of things. That's not really a first-person shooter suitable in sometimes. I don't think, I haven't really looked into it too much, but maybe because if you have delta compression, you need to have reliability on every single package because you're gonna compare it to the last package. So you need to know that the last package got to the endpoint. So that's a different problem space, sort of. Yeah. So yeah, but think about that, and like not necessarily you, Johnny. Everybody how there's a pretty straightforward napkin math you can do to figure out exactly how many bits, like just like the power of 2 thing, and then like, oh, I don't actually need more than 4096 discrete states for this position.
Yeah, it's like you basically determine what is the kind of possible range of values, because like if you have a floating point number, chances are you aren't going to need to use the all the way to the very minimum and all the way to the very maximum. So it's like how can you reduce that footprint to still give you the precision you need as well as the range of values that you need.
Yeah, and this goes for rotational too. There's I maybe can throw this into the dynamic allocate. I don't remember what you call it. Allocation.
Yeah.
The last thing. I'm getting a little bit slow in my brain here, and it's late here in Sweden. Anyway, maybe I can find quickly after before we end the link to. There's an article of how to compress a quaternion. And I use that one to compress anything rotational in just read instructions. And for example, there's a way where if you have 3 of the X, Y, Z, W values, so you're missing one, you can always calculate exactly what's going to be because the 4th one is deterministic by the first 3. So when you synchronize them, you don't have to synchronize all 4. And they always go between minus 7.26, I think, to plus 0.726 or 28. So if you find that range, only 3 values, and then you find exactly how much precision you need to have, so it doesn't click like 5%.
You don't.
Yeah.
It snaps to like 10 degrees at a time or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just like tweak it until like, I can't see the rotational clicks anymore. And then like, okay, I guess my lower precision rotational setting, I think uses a combined of 16 bits. That's not a lot.
Nice.
Yes.
It's almost like RAID in like a server. Like you have like 4 hard drives that basically all store one block of data, and you can lose one hard drive, and it knows how to recalculate that data with the 3 remaining drives.
Actually, this is how it turns out. There's 5 for XYZ, and then there's 1 because what's the last one is actually not exactly deterministic, but I think you need to have 1 more bit to flip it to 0, to positive or negative or something like that. I think I don't remember, but that's something like that. So that's why it's 16, 5, 5, 5, and then 1.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can see it click when it rotates, but it's for stuff that doesn't matter. It's not really relevant.
Right. Yeah, you have to be like right up on it to like
as long as
notice that.
sub 2 degrees rotational precision or something like that. I think I put it in, and it's just fine. And nobody have noticed it. and the other one, like, just put like 3 or 4 more bits per component, and it just blows up the rotational accuracy far beyond what you need. So then you can't see it rotate anymore at all. It's just perfectly smooth. So yeah. I have a suggestion for a little bit of code.
Yeah. What is it?
2 things. First of all, partial. You know what this is, right?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Let's see here. Let's just take a look. I always forget what I name this stuff at. We can just take a look at synced NetID, this one probably, and then we go. I'm just traversing my library.
Yeah, do what you got to do.
Yeah. So this is how I sync.
helpjohnmove.cs.
Yes, and I have, for those who doesn't know, I have code generated everything, and it's based on this type of. All of it is attributes. So Unity's netcode quantities uses more interface-based type deal. I use this thing, and I use this to have like internal synchronization of just specific parts, so not all the components is synced. And I have this different type of types. So for example, this synced int in the reflection code, when I figure out what this is, I look at the end. If it's I'm applied to an enum, let's figure out exactly how many states this enum have and exactly how many bits required to sync those 7 enum values. So this is automatically done in the background when you do the code generation. It's like, I only need 5 bits to do this whole enum set. And the time goes from -1, so I have like this time is not set state, to I think 1,000. So if you let my game run in a game for over is it 10,000? I calculated like 3 hours or something. Like if it runs past 3 hours, then probably something will wonk out, but it will just flip around over again. But I never tried it. I don't know. Nobody's gonna be in the game for 3 hours because my games aren't my sessions aren't that long. But I think it's actually not gonna make a big deal because it's just gonna wrap around. Yeah, maybe some enemies just for a frame just completely despawn or something.
Yeah, maybe that can be a fun little weekend activity for some viewers.
Yeah.
Hop in a game of just read the instructions for 3 hours and see what happens.
Yes, so I can synced. If I get some auto completion going on here, bool entity via NetID. So it's like it does it generates the code for the lookup, so I can like put in an entity into it, and then when it tries to synchronize it, it's like, this entity has this NetID, so I sync the NetID, and then on the client, it's like, I just received a NetID, so I look up what entity that is and place that entity into the slots. So it's just a nice way of getting around having to do everything through NetID all the time. Synced long NetID, Quaternion, time, vector, all of those. Like this vector thing has. And
that's where you can kind of define, what precision you need and what your max and min values are. So then it basically just figures out the amount of bits that it needs for that, right?
Yeah. And then I have
awesome.
this shorthand. In direction high precision that uses the compressed Quaternion version to do the direction. So I don't because the thing is that it's like if you do the yaw and the pitch thing, then you don't get a uniform distribution, because yaw and pitch is not uniform because of the pulse, how it turns out. But Quaternion is much more uniform distributed precision. So that's why I just convert it to a Quaternion, compress that, and then sync it. And then I also have the a scale direction, which is the same thing, just another float which says the length of the quaternion direction. So it's like a length scaled direction, right? And then I
Okay.
have scene optimized high precision and scene optimized low precision, and those were the ones that I spoke about. They will use exactly how many bits they need for the map. So this uses another struct which is computed on load time, which like, oh, on this map we need 22 bits for the X direction, and then it feeds that into the whole system on both serialize and deserialize, and it uses that, and everybody knows, like, oh, it's just everybody knows
Like this is what we're using on this level. Yeah.
22 bits for the X, and that's it. And they have a high and a low version. So the low one is like for stuff that just doesn't really matter and doesn't move. It's like, it's fine if they're like a few centimeters or like an inch off on the clients. It doesn't matter. And then I have a high precision where you shouldn't be able to tell if it moves.
And so you just are just defining that in a script for that specific level, basically.
Yeah. Well, it reads the level size from the level generator. So if last time 2 weeks ago we
you showed
size
your,
of my for 400 600, I think that would be automatically handled, because the where it reads the sizes are just like exactly what the generator spits out as. This is the size I've generated. Go ahead, calculate the bits needed for it. So
okay.
it's like everything is piped through correctly.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of work to make this happen. And then we can like just check this one out where this is where I was going. So here we have state serializer dot underscore gen, which means it generated.
So this is the actual code generation behind it.
Yeah, and my computer is super slow, so let's see here. So this is we can see how far am I gone. 26,000 lines of code.
Nice.
That's what's generated, and when I want to, I actively press a button to regenerate everything, but it takes like 10 milliseconds to do it, so it doesn't matter. Then it needs to compile, but yeah,
so you're not doing it like in your build step or something. It's just kind of like when you need to change things,
actually,
you hit your button.
I do it in my build step too.
I guess in your compilation step when you're just like testing something in Unity.
Control R doesn't trigger it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but go into the menu, build release version, that re-triggers it to make sure that it's up to date.
Is there, just side note, is there a way that you could probably hook into that Control R where if you wanted to regenerate that part of that? I'm sure there would be, right?
You can do that probably with Asset Importer if you really wanted. Or maybe actually C# script are not going through Asset Importer when I think about it. But I think you can have post and pre assembly compilation hookup. I have that for my level generator. So yeah, it's totally possible. But actually, Rasmus from Stanlock recommended me not to do it. I don't think it's a good idea because it's just annoying for us. And the only reason we have it is because we don't want the graphical artist or the other people who doesn't care to randomly have the wrong version. But you, who we were two people at the time.
Yeah, manually do it yourself. Yeah.
Just give him a good slap your colleague if he doesn't remember to press the button. No, joke aside, it's easier when you are just a few people.
Right. Yeah.
They were 35, 40 people studio when they built this thing.
In all different disciplines, and everyone's you got to make sure everyone's got to remember to do that one extra thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is everything you can see here. This is like fascinating. If I go up here, all the way up, 1 million the queries.
Wow.
And then all of the different sync types, and these are the individual IDs that is used to tell the client like this is what's coming, So and these are just
like the packet type. You mean basically?
Yeah, basically just a header like, oh, and then when it comes to it, it's like we can see if we can find a serialization function here. Serialize pillar bit state. So let's see here. Here we should have serializer. So here's a bunch of like, here's the state, there's a state, there's pillar bit states, and this is how many you can have in it. And then this is the identifier of the just now upcoming pillar bits that we're about to sync. And then we'll jump into here, and here you can see here comes the scene serializing data. So this is the optimized. If we go into that one, you can see here it's like low precision bits, high precision bits, blah blah blah, and these are calculated when I start the map. So this is exactly how many bits per axis that is used to do the whole map.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we go back here, if my back button want to work, maybe I'll just press this. So this one is fed into the right scene optimized high precision position. Right? So here we have a ground point. So I just sync the ground point where the pillar base is going to hit.
Okay.
And then a timestamp when he's started, and then he just follows a curve to fly from the sky down. So the flying down is just completely non-synced client simulated. Right, and you can see here we have evaluation time. That's the time that it uses to evaluate where in the fall he is. Yeah, and we can just like peek into this one, and it's not that overcomplicated. You can see here you have the min, max position, and the bits X, Y, and Z, right ranged single. So this is, the quantized float, which is like, this is the start, this is the end, and this is how many bits we use for precision. This is not code generated because you only need one of these.
Makes sense.
Yeah, all right. And then there's two things that I wanted to show. First of all, there's one part of code generation that's very basic, but if you don't know it, you're going to tear your hair out. Like honestly, it's just, you can't do it without it. Let's see here if I can find it. This is so much code that is like super annoying to scroll through.
It's a lot.
Is
there a... Good.
You know what this means?
Partial?
Yeah, in this context.
In a generated context?
Yeah.
Kind of. I wouldn't know a good way to.
Yeah, I think
explain it.
I think you're the same type of bamboozle that I was the first 5 years of C# development for me, where I thought partial was to be able to split up a class into two different files.
Right.
That's
cool
just
because it is.
Yeah,
but it is one thing you can do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a side effect of the main use for it. Yeah, I was as confused as you when I got this pointed out to me, and I'm like, what now? Partial is not made for this? Like, nah, that's just a random side effect of how the compilation engine treats it. And like, I'm sure it was on purpose to be able to have the two different files for the same class. Mm-hmm. But this is the actual reason why it was created. So this is not code generated. It's the same class that I looked, the 26,000 lines of code.
Okay.
As state serializer, partial, right, class. So what happens is I declare all of these four functions private. I think, I don't know if they can be public. I don't know. They can't have a return type, for example. They can have a ref type, but they cannot have a return type. And I declare them partial. And so, like, for example, setup queries _ gen. And I call it somewhere, probably here up in create. Yeah, setup gen. But I can go over, and we can go to this one. and we end up here in the generated class. And this is the generated code, which sets up all the queries to be able to handle it, right? Makes sense? But
Yep.
if I go to gen, and I'm going to explain this while it's loading, because it's going to take a shitload of time to load this probably. We'll just remove that, save it, and now there's no more setup queries gen. How does it work? Will it even compile? Imagine if every time the code generator sort of threw up on itself a little bit and generated some crappy code, and you have to remove it, and then you have to untangle everywhere that the code uses the generated code that's not there anymore. That just doesn't work. You cannot work with code generation in that way, because it's just you're gonna have compilation errors in your code generated code all the time when you develop it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So the way partial works, and I can just go back here, and if my computer is so slow when I stream, I can just reload it, so I can prove my point, but it doesn't matter really. We'll go back to the code here. So partial.
Yep.
When you declare a partial class, that means that you can have another part of it in another file. But it also means that you can have partial function that you can call from the one part of the class to the other part of the class, and the other part of the class doesn't even need to have
Doesn't need to exist.
This one doesn't exist.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why you can't have return.
So you don't get any compilation errors or anything, and
that's, you see now what I mean. That's the reason for partial to exist.
Okay.
And yeah, I like 5 years ago when I started working on this, or 4 years, this was actually I think there was only like 1 or 2 people at Stallock who knew about this, also because code generation wasn't really part of the vocabulary back then.
Right.
But then they're like, how is this done? And then like somebody discovered, oh, partial, that's how you do it. Like Frederick, who has been on the stream with Rasmus, I think he was the one who told me like, make sure to use partial. We discovered this after a few weeks of working on it. Like, this is just completely unworkable without the partial version of it.
So you can technically,
so that's how it's done.
You can technically do source generation without using the partial keyword, but you'll just run into errors left and right.
Yeah,
is that fair to say?
You're just gonna be miserable the whole time. You need to generate the code, then call it from your handwritten code, and then you can use it. Like, how the hell do you use it unless you're gonna call the generated functions? And you can't call them unless you generate them. So it becomes like a 3-step problem. And in the end also, all of a sudden you have a compilation issue, and then you need to remove all of the generated code. And then you're like, oh, well, I got 15 different functions called, and I need to comment out all of them before I can even try to debug my generator code. So that's just doesn't work.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So, and maybe I should preface that I haven't actually read from Microsoft that this is the exact primary use of partial, but that's what I understood when I talked with Stallock about it, and the times I've actually read some official.
And they seem to know what they're doing over there at Stunlock, so.
Yeah. And like, it makes sense that like having a split class in 2 different files becomes like a natural result of the partial generator purpose of it. Of course, you can just have both of them handwritten and just split. But if you want one generated, then you can have this nice fancy partial functions that doesn't even need to exist if you don't have them yet.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, would you be able to give us a little bit of insight into like how the actual code generation works?
Oh yeah. It's slightly anticlimactic actually. and it's still compiling 1 minute soon 2 minutes into. Well, no, it actually was repainting now. I can see if I can find some, but it's not that crazy. It's just like blah, blah, blah. Where do I have it? I think I have it in the editor folder somewhere. No. Auto serialization editor. Okay, so we can just take a look at maybe this one. Yeah, I think this is a case where it's like a little bit tricky to, like, it's tricky and anticlimactic at the same time. It's basically just a structured way of spewing out string. Like, it's not really that much else than just producing a string that happens to be C# code. That's more how you should view it. But like here I have like TPL, that stands for template. For me, this is just made up by myself. I have no idea how other people are doing it, but the way I'm doing it is like.
You mean that TPL file format? That's something that you created, or is that a standard thing?
No, that's just, that's just me who want to keep track of what the hell my
files
are.
Yeah, I'll create this TPL file type. Yeah, okay, got you.
It's just a text file, and I just read the text from it.
Yeah.
And then I have all of these hashtags, sync switch. So that's like just swapped out for whatever I need to do. So there's just a bunch of different keywords that I swap out. You can see here name, right? And then maybe we can take a look at, do we have any other good part of this? Serialize, auto serial, give me a second. Serialize, maybe this one could be reasonable. Yeah, so here we have a struct, serialize hashtag name, and hashtag name, and this is the name of the type that I'm serializing, and I swap all of them out, and then I have a few things where it's like in the attribute I provided some metadata, like for example, is this a singleton? Is there anybody else? So I need to distinguish them via net ID. If this is just a singleton, like the single game mode component holding the game mode state, I only need one, and there is no reason to identify it. And then I have like, so I declare that in the code in the attribute, and then when this template is, the code generator just swaps out a bunch of strings. Hashtag not singleton. If it's not a singleton, then we keep this line. If it is a singleton, then we remove it. And then, so you're doing a little bit
conditional stuff in there.
Yeah, I got the and or and everything. So, and then you can see hashtag not zero sized.
So, and this is basically all custom stuff that you've created, like all this kind of custom logic and like it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can maybe like, and this is just, it's a little bit too much code to. I don't have any problems with showing off any of it. It's just a little bit too much to like go through. It takes.
It's just it's a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is the code that generates all of it.
Okay, so that actually kind of scans the files and like does the conditional logic and then spits out the output.
Yeah, so you can just see from the different constants here. It's just looks for all of the different things that they are hard-coded. And then we have all of these things, which is like, shorthand for different strings that I need to be able to use. This is basically my hacky way of having some type safety. So I don't have to write the actual string all the time and misspell it several times over. And then you have, inner segment. And do we need a data prefix? Then I take this inner segment and replace the field name with data dot field name, because it's coming from a data point, and then I shove that thing into the new line segment, which I shove into some segment, which I then
I'm sure there's like a ton of
rigid body sync code to
edge cases you need to consider and everything, and
apply arguments, split this together, toggle keyword, So like you can see here, this is. I mean, I this is not like totally understandable just looking at it, but maybe slightly. So you can see here arguments. Let's see. You know what? This is probably well. This is like sort of a recursive thing, which just like finds all those hashtags. Just go through a list of them and like just like look at the attribute, like whatever do we have. Okay, we just flip on and off, on and off, on and off, all of this, and remove some lines, keep some lines, and then like, oh, this is the version that's supposed to be used for help John move. And then we just print it out in the file. So it's just a bunch of templates which sort of contains all the permutations of the different sync types, and then I just, by the attribute info that I specify in the code, I just use different parts of the template file. And it's a little bit of a recursive nature where you can like, oh, in the code I can say, oh, here with this sort of command, I can go into this file and like expand this file into recursively into the file you're already in. So I can like, you know, insert different files. Yeah, whatever. It's you can hear it's tricky to explain, but it's not really that complex if you just go if you would go through it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is a tough question to answer, but how long did this take? I mean, I'm sure this is, I say it's a tough question to answer because I'm sure you were working on this and refining this like probably throughout most of the development of your project, right?
I can give the both answers. How long was it between the first time I started working on it until like I was basically done with it, and what was the effective time of that between those times?
Okay.
I think the first time probably 2 years I've been having this on and off, and just 2 bursts. First was very naive just to make it work, and then I'm like, this is gonna break down hard if I don't use a template version of it. That is much more. I had a slightly templated version of it, but it wasn't recursive in a good way. So you can like just expand and put in new stuff when you find some new features.
Right. Yeah.
The write in your template file that you want to call another template file and expand that template file into that line. That thing, that should like, it's easier than it sounds, and it's just no.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I restructured to do, because I realized that's
so you don't have to write all these like bespoke templates that are all basically the same with some slight differences, but like, you know, you just kind of make the structure and then, you know, reuse the parts that can be reused.
Yeah. So 2 years probably, and then effectively maybe 4 or 5 months, something like that. So that's 2 or 3 different bursts. So maybe the first version took a month to write, like that, which is sort of reasonable, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I just wanted to do it, so I did it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's an elegant solution.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm completely in agreement, but I take the compliment.
From the little I've seen, I guess.
Yeah, there's one. I see that we are running. It's sort of late, and I need to go to bed soon. But there's one thing that I should point to that I think is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
And you're gonna recognize this. Let's see here. And questions from you or for the audience. Of course, I'll answer anything. Or Steam server. Is that what Steamworks server? There we have it probably. And then no, that was not it. Isn't it Steamworks server I named it to? That one. It was that one. It was just
click the wrong thing.
Yes. And then we have somewhere here in send, we have a helper function. Do you see where this is going?
Not yet. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So for those who doesn't know, native collections are brilliant. Use native collections everywhere. So what you're looking at is a native net buffer. If we look into that, that's a stuff that I've taken partly from NetBleed thing and then converted, so it's burstable because it's a struct and it doesn't use any. It's burstable, and it is backed by technically a native list, which is then converted into native array for a variety of reasons. And then I use, so you can just take some random sample like read unsigned int 16. So it like reads from the native array in a specific way to get out this uint. And then you have the all of those like read unsigned single or unit single number of bits, and you have the equal right somewhere. Maybe I have them in another file, actually, I don't remember. Yeah, right. Right double, right, a million different versions. Yeah, right signed single, so positive float values with a specific amount of bits, all of those things. So that's the thing you need to do to compress it to like, we don't need that many bits, so we just use that type of deal to be able to bit pack everything.
Right, and this is for basically, to give people some context, for writing your network packets, right? Like when you're sending data.
Good context. Yeah. So and this is a huge file, and I think I've written half of it and rewritten the other half. So it's some work, but it's still the core bit manipulation I haven't written. That's just crazy things to write. It just takes so much time, and you need to set up proper testing, unit testing to be able to make sure this works, because bit manipulation is just annoying to deal with all over the place. Anyway.
Yeah.
So this produces bits packed in a byte array, right? I showed that all the way up here. A native array, or a native list technically, but they are referring to the same thing really here for reasons, but just native collection, native array. Then when it comes time to sending this, I get the native buffer, and this is, the native array behind it. And then I go to my send function, and this is the Steamworks implementation. And I go with this one, native array unsave utility, get unsave pointer. So for those who doesn't know, native collections are basically C-style arrays, just pointers to a continuous part of the memory. And you just like reframe that in whatever type you need it to be. And it's a very, very good solution from Unity. Yeah. And we can get just the int pointer, so just a straight up pointer to that.
Like essentially the beginning address of that array, right?
The beginning address. So no copies anywhere. Just like this is where all my data starts.
Yep.
There you have an address. And then you take that and you use this send message to, damn, that's a fascinating pop-up. Let's not have it.
Got some documentation there.
Let's do like this instead so we can see. So this one, Steam net connection. That's a connection to another Steam ID. That's how you communicate over Steam to make a network engine and to make a network packages. This is basically behind all of the Steam games, which uses Steamworks to communicate. And then you have your int pointer. And this is just, here's the start of the byte array. And for the socket communication over networking, everything is just bytes, just a big byte array. That's the only thing we talk about here. And then on the different clients and servers, you interpret that into whatever you're interested in doing with it. But this is just byte array. So this sending this like this with this one means that in the 26,000 lines of code that I showed you, I'm writing to a C-style byte array super fast because it's bursted, and I'm chugging, making it super big if I need to. And then when I send it, Steamworks takes this array as is, zero copying, zero overhead anywhere. It just takes the exact buffer in C style, which is super fast, and it's just over to the socket. So there's like yeah, this is the most efficient way to get a bunch of serialized bits over to the other side. And I think people are in these modern times where you have link with, to array, to list, and you have copy, clone, and everything, and you can just like juggle data types and collection types back and forth because everything got an overloaded converter to whatever type you need. You forget about that, like you don't need to copy anything unless if you have the API that's like allows for the right data types. So
Yeah, exactly.
this
Yeah,
is super good.
no memory allocations or any of that.
Yeah. No, and is this the Steamworks package from that store? I don't know. This is just a wrapper, C# wrapper, to be able to call Steamworks API from C#. So there's
Something that you wrote basically.
No, this is basically just a generated wrapper, I think. There's some guy
okay.
who wrote C#.
Oh, you found like a GitHub repo or something.
Yeah. It's like, if you just want to call the equivalent C style functions, you just have set up a few things that like this is how we're supposed to call a C function or a C++ function from C#. And then we can just take the Steamworks API, the header file that declares all of the functions available, and just generate the wrapper for it, because it just looks the same everywhere. And most of the Steamworks integration on the asset store or anywhere else are no object-oriented and stuff like that, which is just irrelevant unless you're doing a very traditional object-oriented version of a game.
Right.
So yeah, this is the point where I probably might not be very relatable to a lot of people, but I don't use a lot of assets because it doesn't often. It's not really. It's made to be easy, not to be good or fast, and that's fine. Different use cases, but yeah. I just look at the API and then like, what do I need to communicate with this API? And then I go from there.
Exactly. Take what you need, leave what you don't.
Yeah. So the Steamworks API that Raft uses, that was, object oriented. You create an object for the connection to the user, or you create an object for this thing, and you create an object to handle the achievements. And I'm like, well, the API says that you just send in an ID and says it's good, like you achieved the achievements and this is the ID. There's no need for an object anywhere there. It's just data. So that's why I just skipped all of that. Hey Turbo.
What's up, Parker? It's a friend of mine from jiu-jitsu from back home.
Nice. And Christian Locke, are you using Roslyn for CodeGen? Yeah, no, nothing like that. It's just string production. It's so, yeah. When people ask this kind of thing, I'm like, I feel a slight, what do you call it, imposter syndrome. Like, I just make a string that looks like C# and it compiles, and it's, I don't know, do you need Roslyn?
Does what it needs to do.
Yeah, but like,
can you ship a game with it? Turns out you can.
Roslyn is really cool and it's really good, but I don't need it, so I didn't use it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the potential topics that we could bring up for episode 16 when we have the three of us on. I know Danny wants to talk about some source generation stuff at some point, so if people are interested in that, then it could be a good topic. So yeah, it'll be one of the topics that I'll put out on the voting for that.
Yeah, and then have you looked into existing solutions for templating? Yeah, that's one of the things where I just wrote my own, but that might be slightly more closer to what I did, where I used sort of template solution already. That because there is some, I think it's called like T3 or something. It's a templating solution that works in C# or something. But I looked at it, I didn't really feel like I needed it, and I just tried without it. So yeah. But
yeah, and again, you wanted experience of doing it yourself and kind of learning the ins and outs of how it works and everything, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also I didn't really know what I was getting into, and part of it was I don't know if I'm using a sledge for a little nail here if I use the wrong thing. So let's see what happens. Yeah. So I think that's it for we're going way past the time, but it's fine for me. But I think that's enough of the
Yeah,
info
no,
track,
this is
unless
great.
there's
Yeah, I think we
more.
hit on a lot of different points here, and there's yeah, a bunch of different, interesting things that we covered here today. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna remove my screen share and look up a thing
Yeah,
here.
you go ahead and look up your thing, and then I'll go ahead and we can get into our dynamic allocations where we just kind of share some fun things with the community here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up what I have here. So this is an article which I haven't got a chance of reading it because it is a very, 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 very long article, as you can see. But I do think it's interesting because it relates to some data-oriented design topics here. So the title of the article is "Leaving Rust Game Dev After 3 Years." So this is from what seems to be a pretty experienced developer here who has shipped games in, well, they actually have a small team of people. Looks like a 2-person team. They ship games in a bunch of different engines. They've written their own 2D engine using Rust. They've used Bevy. So they've used a bunch of different things. Sounds like they've been using Rust for the past 3 years in some serious commercial projects. And they said they're leaving Rust game dev after 3 years. So I think this would be an interesting read through for anyone who's interested in data-oriented programming, because it's kind of primarily what Rust is, or a lot of what a lot of people use Rust for is data-oriented type things. I know like the Bevy engine is kind of like ECS by default essentially. So yeah, I definitely want to have a good read through this myself, and just kind of see what their thoughts are on this overall, and what they might be doing outside of that. So yeah. Yeah, 96-minute read. Yeah, very long article. So
I'm probably going to read that with some AI voice, maybe. I'm very interested in Rust, and this makes me like, oh, maybe I should never try that. And that might be a good thing to read.
Maybe I'll slowly chip away at this over a couple days or something like that. But yeah, if I do read through the whole thing, which I do intend to, I would want to come back on another episode and talk about this some more.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually.
Yeah,
so I think
that's what I got.
Found a Quaternion compression thing.
Okay.
So maybe I can post that also here.
Oh, that's is that or?
Yeah, mine was there. I think this is one. Yeah, it's like I think this is a slightly expanded version, but use the smallest 3 compression for transmitting Quaternion. Yeah, and it's full precision. Yeah, I think this is it. This is probably not the one I based my thing on, but more or less the same. So
it's the same concept.
A, B, C, X, Y, Z. You don't need the 4th, and then you have max index. I think maybe I was wrong about, but there's 1 or 2 bits extra from that you need. But so yeah, for those people who wanted to see how you can compress a Quaternion, this is probably. I know this is not the exact one I read, but it looks like it's the same math, so it should be fine. Yeah, I can see it's the same math, so that's one show.
Cool, that's great.
Yeah.
Here's something that you kind of hit on a little bit earlier, but have you considered publishing anything you built for the game to open source or maybe sell as an asset store asset?
Both. Right now, I have 3 different assets that I want to make in a sellable version. The auto settings that I talked about earlier. Then I have a graph drawer, which draws a very big graph, very thin, big graph over the whole screen. So you can have a nice way to have a first frames per second meter or anything they want to measure over time. I'm so annoyed at frames per second meters on the asset store being slow in of themselves, so they like make the FPS value they spit out completely irrelevant. So I'm like, did they think that through? Or like, if you spend 1 millisecond on drawing the FPS feedback, like
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can still get some value out of that, but I built one now, which is like an overlay drawer thing, which takes I think 0.12 milliseconds or something, and that's the maximum I could get it down to. So that's better. That's almost a tenth of the best second one I found on the asset store. And then also I have something called a shader diet, which is like shader stripping in my own way. But otherwise, all of the source generators and stuff.
And you do have one thing on the asset store already.
Fake interior. Yeah,
Fake interior asset. Yeah.
That was built for the game, and then I made an asset out of it. But all of the other stuff, which is a lot of stuff, is like I'm terrified of support problems with those because like, yeah, I'm not like, it's not.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's a lot of your stuff is very custom built and highly specific to your needs and the type of game that you're making. So yeah, and anything outside of that, then yeah, I could see how again a lot of those edge cases come up, and yeah.
So, but maybe open source, who knows? But I don't think there's, well, yeah, maybe open source. There's like 3-4 things: the light bagger, the source generator, and some other things that I'm like, yeah, I could probably release that open source, and it will be maybe somebody who get a use from it.
Sweet.
And then, do you have any reference to other compression algorithms? There is no other compression algorithm. When I mean compression, I just mean like use the exact bits you need. Compression generally is other stuff, but this is, well, I guess bit using the bits you need for the actual ranges. That's sort of domain-specific compression, I think you can call that technically. But like compression in the sense of like gzip or rar, I have zero of that in the game. For min max float precision, I think you just gotta read up on how quantization and stuff works. I'm
sure there's probably like kind of fundamental stuff that you can use in any project, right?
I think quantization and number of bits, like those two keywords, and then like quantize, number of bits, synchronization, serialization, whatever. If you Google on those, you will find somewhere where you're like, this is how you think about using the exact amount of bits. But it's kind of a broad subject.
There's an awesome article I came across a long time ago that talked about synchronizing things across the network and reducing memory footprint with kind of compression and stuff. I don't have it readily available, but maybe I'll have it ready for next episode.
But it's too broad of a subject where I would guess maybe 70% of all games ever made have used some form of this, which is like makes it just ubiquitous. And probably like 100 articles written on it. All right. So, with that, we can go ahead and kind of close out our show here. We'll finish off by thanking our Patreon supporters as well as now YouTube members. Again, you do have the ability to support us on Patreon as well as through YouTube memberships. Basically, all the support tiers are exactly the same. So real quickly, do just want to thank the supporters at the CPU registered tier, which is our highest tier. So thank you to eCool and Christian Locke for your support over there. We really do appreciate it. And so with that is brings us to the end of the show. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for a lot of good questions and comments throughout the chat. I think it hit on a lot of good topics, and thank you to Tobias for showing us some insight into how you develop your network stack. I think it was really cool. I definitely learned a lot of things, and have some more things that I want to research on my own after this. So Well, the future is bright and a lot of fun stuff to learn. For all of us, but I understand.
And you gotta let me know how to pronounce your last name. I don't know if it's Look or Lock, but yeah, I'll try my best. All right. Anyways, with that, yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Any closing words, Tobias?
No, but yeah, closing words. If you have time, go for the cool, fun solution. It's fun.
Sounds good. Great to have you here, Parker. Miss you too, buddy. All right, sounds good. I'll just keep mispronouncing it then.
Nice.
All right, everybody. Take care.